Only one thing's equal for all, and that is death.
Johan Liebert, perhaps one of the most complex and terrifying anime characters ever created. Cold, calculating, and utterly lethal. But what sets him apart? What makes his every action so chilling? Beneath that calm facade lies a dark and profound philosophy: nihilism. Let's delve into the psychology of Johan Liebert and explore how nihilism molded him into a monster untethered by morality.
Death is a normal thing, so why live?
Nihilism is a concept that's not easily grasped by many. In philosophy, nihilism is the belief that life lacks inherent meaning, purpose, or intrinsic value. Friedrich Nietzsche, one of the most renowned philosophers to explore nihilism, believed that humanity must create its own meaning. However, Johan Liebert represents the darker side of this concept, the belief that since life holds no meaning, all actions are equally valid, devoid of morality or regret. In this context, Johan does not view the world as a place where he must adhere to rules or societal norms. To him, everyone is merely a pawn in a purposeless game. He sees others not as individuals with value or goals, but merely as tools or obstacles. From his brutal childhood at Kinderheim to his adult life, nihilism forms the foundation of Johan's every decision and action. This tale commences in 1975, when Johan's parents were arranged to be together and compelled into a relationship by a psychiatrist and psychologist named Franz Bonaparte, who orchestrated a eugenics experiment. The objective of this experiment was to fashion the perfect leader for humanity, someone blessed with exceptional beauty and intellect. This experiment led to the birth of twins. At the time, they were not given names, as this was a crucial aspect of the experiment. A name bestows an individual with an identity, and with that identity comes a tendency to prioritize individuality. However, a leader, according to the experiment's doctrine, should not be preoccupied with their own individuality. This concept became the cornerstone of Johan's existence. Before Johan's birth, his parents attempted to flee but were eventually recaptured. Johan's father was killed, leaving the rest of the family as captives of the experiment. They later managed to escape to a place known as the Three Frogs, which became their first refuge. When Johan and Anna were 5 years old, they dressed identically to create the impression that there was only one child. This was done to avoid detection during their escape. Johan was often clad in feminine attire identical to his sisters, which significantly shaped his developing sense of self. Their mother likely confused them for one another, leading Johan to perceive himself and his sister as a single entity, a singular person. This was further reinforced by their mother never bestowing names upon them. Eventually, Franz Bonaparte and his assistant Peter Capek tracked them down and sought to take one of the children. Whether the mother could distinguish between the twins remains unclear, but she initially selected Johan, only to change her mind and hand over Anna instead. Anna and their mother were taken to the Red Rose Mansion, where Anna was locked away in a dark cupboard for what felt like an eternity, enduring psychological torment before eventually being shown a room filled with corpses, individuals who knew of the experiment and were subsequently silenced by Bonaparte. Throughout the narrative, it becomes evident that despite Johan's extraordinary intellect, he is emotionally far less stable than Anna. Despite being repeatedly exposed to horrific sights, Anna grew up to be a decent person, whereas Johan did not. The moment Johan witnessed his mother choosing between them, rather than refusing to give up either child, combined with his lack of identity, he came to the realization that life is inherently unfair and unequal. Johan was left alone with the book The Nameless Monster, penned by Franz Bonaparte. After the experiment, Anna managed to escape back to the Three Frogs and reunited with Johan, who had likely read Bonaparte's book multiple times. The story of the nameless monster encapsulates Johan's character perfectly. Johan was an empty vessel, void of meaning and nihilistic, a black hole in his heart that destroyed everything it touched. He had no identity, no name. We fear death because it obliterates everything we cherish. Without an identity, we are akin to someone who is already dead, nihil, non-existent, not even like someone who has passed away, but like someone who never existed at all. When we harbor dark thoughts that might lead us to self-destruction, it is our identity that holds us back. Our hopes and dreams shield us from that abyss. Johan, however, had none of that. Imagine a person devoid of identity, memories, or hope, a person without a name. How would such a person appear? By constantly reading this book, Johan came to believe that he was the nameless monster. The book became the linchpin of Johan's lack of identity. It indoctrinated and brainwashed him. Later, Anna recounted to Johan what had transpired, and Johan internalized her words so profoundly that he adopted the story as his own memory. He genuinely believed that he was the one taken to the Red Rose mansion, that he was the one who saw the bodies scattered across the mansion. Their mother vanished, and the experiment was brought to an end. Johan experienced pain and bewilderment from the moment he was conceived. He was forced to grow up without a father, without a name, without an identity, constantly questioning whether his mother truly intended to choose Anna over him, or if she had merely mistaken one for the other. Johan and Anna were nameless, isolated from the outside world, and the only connection they could form was with each other. As a consequence, they were never able to fully develop their own identities. Their identities were so intertwined that Johan even mistook his sister's memories for his own. This led them to view each other as one and the same, two halves of a whole. With everything that happened, Johan came to believe that he and Anna were the only ones left in the world, the only ones who truly mattered. Johan believed that Bonaparte would relentlessly pursue them, so he devised a plan to erase all traces of their existence. He set the Three Frogs ablaze and fled with Anna. Along their journey, they encountered an elderly couple who showed them kindness and provided them with food. The couple discussed what to do with the twins, Johan and Anna. They understood that the twins must have fled their home for a serious reason, but the man also mentioned that they couldn't adopt Johan and Anna as their own children, which meant they might eventually report them to the authorities. Johan realized this, knowing that if the couple informed the police, Bonaparte would soon catch up to them. When Anna went to pick flowers, Johan killed the couple to protect Anna without her knowledge. Johan and Anna fled once more. During their journey, near the Czech-German border, the twins collapsed from exhaustion, appearing as though they were on the brink of death. A patrol officer named Helmut Wolf discovered them and chose to save them, having found the nameless monster in their possession. He decided to name the boy Johan after the monster in the book and gave the girl the name Anna. He then sent them to separate orphanages, Anna to a place called Orphanage 47 and Johan to Kinderheim. Kinderheim was a secret experimental orphanage located in East Berlin, East Germany. At Kinderheim, the children were trained to become perfect soldiers, based on Bonaparte's theories and concepts. The experiment aimed to erase the children's memories and identities, focusing their minds solely on becoming ideal soldiers for the government. Johan, who already struggled with a lack of identity, was a prime subject for this experiment. They began by erasing all his memories, including any sense of self he might have had. Johan, who had always been nameless and without a true identity, intrigued the authorities, leading them to force him into an interview while he was semi-conscious and under the influence of illegal drugs. An audio recording reveals Johan speaking with a psychologist. The psychologist begins by asking Johan his name, and Johan responds with various names: Johan, Hans, Otto, and others, indicating that he didn't know his own name or who he truly was. The names he mentioned were characters from Bonaparte's book. When the psychologist asked Johan what he feared the most, Johan didn't initially respond. When asked if he had ever killed someone, Johan gave a cryptic answer, saying that he was reading a picture book while waiting for Anna, and that many people had died. Here we see Johan beginning to merge his memories with Anna's. When the psychologist repeated the question about Johan's greatest fear, Johan finally responded, stating that his biggest fear was forgetting Anna. We hear Johan pleading with the psychologist not to take Anna away from him, because she was the last person left in the world for him. This moment marks the first and only time we see Johan express fear. He pleaded repeatedly, demonstrating how deeply he cared for Anna. At that time, she was the only connection he had left with anyone, especially after his relationship with his mother had been shattered when she allowed one of them to be taken. Johan couldn't endure being in the orphanage because he feared they might erase his memories of Anna. Consequently, he devised a plan to escape. He exploited the tensions within Kinderheim, ultimately sparking a chaotic event that would forever tarnish the orphanage's reputation. 50 children and instructors fought and killed each other, while Johan sat calmly on a chair at the top of the main staircase, watching the carnage unfold as the orphanage burned down. Johan and Anna were subsequently adopted by former East German foreign trade advisor Michael Liebert and his wife. Initially, the Liebert family only intended to adopt Johan, but Johan refused to go anywhere without his sister, leading to Anna's adoption as well. At this stage, Johan still maintained a profound bond with Anna, telling her that the entire world belonged to her because he had gifted it to her. Anna was delighted by this sentiment. It's clear that Johan's connection to Anna remained central to his life, as he sought to protect her and ensure she had everything she needed. However, when Bonaparte eventually discovered their whereabouts through the news, he intended to visit them at the Liebert family home. The family showed Bonaparte Johan and Anna, who appeared to be asleep, but Johan was actually awake and witnessed the entire encounter. Fearing that Bonaparte might force the family to surrender them, Johan murdered his adoptive parents. Anna was awakened by the sound of gunfire, and Johan told her he had no choice because the monster had arrived. Having endured the experiments at Kinderheim, Johan realized that Bonaparte was after him, not Anna. He feared that their close bond would also make Anna a target, thereby endangering her. As a result, he instructed Anna to shoot him, then erase all fingerprints and discard the weapon out of the window. Johan reassured her that it was all right, insisting they were the same person, essentially saying that he was Anna. Here we see Johan's identity confusion re-emerge. His own death didn't concern him, as he viewed himself merely as an extension of Anna. Anna shot Johan, but was unable to flee due to the shock, leaving her paralyzed with fear. They were discovered by the police and rushed to the hospital, where Johan was operated on by Dr. Kenzo Tenma. As Dr. Tenma was about to begin the operation on Johan, he received a call from the hospital director, Udo Heinemann, who ordered him to abandon the boy's operation in favor of attending to the mayor. Remembering a past decision he regretted, Tenma ultimately chose to operate on Johan. Tenma made this choice because he believed that all lives are born equal. He felt that by saving Johan, he was also saving himself, even if it meant jeopardizing his career. Angered, Tenma approached the unconscious Johan, venting his frustration and wishing that the hospital director would perish. Unbeknownst to Tenma, Johan was conscious all along. Seizing the opportunity to repay Tenma's kindness, Johan later killed the hospital director and 2 other doctors using poisoned sweets, thereby fulfilling Tenma's wish by murdering Udo Heinemann, along with Dr. Oppenheim and Dr. Boyer, before vanishing from the hospital with Anna. When Anna and Johan were reunited earlier, Anna was traumatized by the events she had witnessed. Upon seeing Johan alive, instead of feeling relieved, Anna screamed and fled from him. We witness Johan's attempt to reach out to Anna, and he weeps when he sees her. This marks the moment where Johan begins his transformation into the nameless monster from Bonaparte's book. Anna was his only genuine connection, the sole meaning in his life. She was the source of his purpose, hope, and even his identity. When she screamed and fled, Johan felt utterly rejected, believing that his last connection had been severed. He had never been wanted, not by his mother, and now, not even by his sister. His memories became fragmented and unclear. This is where Johan begins to embrace nihilism. the belief that there is no meaning in the world or in life. Nothing is important, nothing holds significance, and life has no point. It is here that Johan begins to dream of annihilating everything, to dream of an end to all things, a world devoid of meaning, purpose, or connections, a world without identity for anyone, a world without a name. We observe that Johan does not merely despise the world's emptiness, but he also longs to see it obliterated. He declared that life is insignificant, with the only equality in life being death. Johan's vision of destroying the world mirrors the Nameless Monster book, where only Johan remains at the end. Johan and Anna are essentially the same person, so by leaving the two of them alone in the world, he believes he has given everything to Anna. He sees this as the only way he can express his love for her. Johan executes his plan by securing financial resources and political influence, positioning himself to destroy the world. He manipulates numerous individuals and garners followers as he carries out his plan. He later enlists the help of neo-Nazis, who are eager for the Aryan race to rise, to aid him in his quest. However, Johan remains indifferent to their cause, as his sole desire is to destroy the world, creating a world devoid of purpose and without a name. After fleeing the hospital, Johan left Anna with the Fortner family, realizing that Bonaparte was actually after him, and that distancing himself from Anna was the wisest course of action. Johan then moved between various foster homes, eventually hiring serial killers across Germany to eliminate his former foster parents. One trio involved in these murders included Adolf Junkers and his two accomplices. However, Johan ultimately betrayed the group he had hired. Two were killed on the spot, while Junkers, trying to escape, was struck by a car, sustaining a head injury. Dr. Kenzo Tenma treated Junkers, but one night, Junkers' fear drove him to flee the hospital. Tenma pursued him to an abandoned building, where Johan shot Junkers dead, leaving Tenma in shock. At this juncture, Tenma realized that Johan had saved his life, allowing him to cling to the belief that all human lives are equal. Yet the boy he had saved was capable of killing without a shred of remorse, someone who might murder without a second thought for the lives and dreams of his victims. Tenma felt responsible for saving a psychopath and took on the burden of the murders Johan had committed. This marked the moment when Tenma resolved to stop Johan, even if it meant killing him. Johan seemed intent on proving Tenma wrong, that not all lives are equal. He aimed to make his point by pushing Tenma to the brink, compelling him to attempt murder. Johan then sought to reunite with his long-lost sister, now known as Nina. After a failed attempt to contact her via email, Nina fainted at the sight of him and decided to meet at Heidelberg Castle. Johan hired two corrupt policemen, Detectives Messener and Michael Muller, to murder Nina's foster parents while she was away. However, Dr. Tenma arrived at the castle just in time and managed to escape with Nina, foiling Johann's scheme. Johan later enrolled at Munich University with the aim of getting close to the former European economist Hans-Georg Schuwald. His initial plan was to kill Schuwald, thereby gaining control over Germany's economy, which would grant him economic stability and political influence. Johan began his plot by eliminating those closest to Schuwald and isolating him, positioning himself favorably. Johan attempted to reunite Schuwald with his son, but when it was revealed that Edmund Fahren was not his child, Johan manipulated him into committing suicide. Eventually, Karl Neumann was revealed as Schuwald's biological son, and Johan orchestrated their reunion. Private detective Richard Brown was hired to investigate Fahren's suicide and began linking Johan to other unsolved murders. In response to Richard's interference, Johan made several unsuccessful attempts on his life before personally manipulating Richard into committing suicide, thus removing the obstacle. Karl and Schuwald then decided that if anything happened to Schuwald, Johan would take his place as Karl's successor. Johan's plan progressed smoothly until the book donation ceremony at the Munich Library, where he intended to ensure Schuwald's death. However, upon seeing a copy of the picture book The Nameless Monster in the library, Johan experienced a sudden psychological reaction that caused him to scream and faint. This moment triggered the return of Johan's childhood memories, which had been suppressed during his time at Kinderheim. He realized that he was not the nameless monster he had believed himself to be. Instead, he had been manipulated and controlled all along. In response, Johan set fire to all the books in the library, symbolically abandoning his previous goals and refocusing on uncovering his past, including his desire to kill Bonaparte, who had turned him into a monster. As the fire engulfed the library and visitors scrambled to escape, Johan remained calm, standing on stage with Schuwald, both unaffected by the chaos. Johan informed Schuwald that he no longer wished to kill him. When Schuwald asked where he came from, Johan gazed into his eyes, as if peering into his soul, and replied that he was born in a town from a fairy tale, where he and his other self were the only ones in the world without a name. Soon after, as smoke and flames filled the room, Tenma emerged. Johan descended from the stage and walked towards Tenma, pointing to his forehead and instructing him to shoot. Johan only pointed to his head when he no longer had any control, surrendering himself to fate. In that moment he was challenging fate, questioning whether he would survive. As it turned out, Tenma did not pull the trigger. This act of challenging fate was a core aspect of Johan's philosophy. He introduced children to the rooftop game or suicide game, where they would walk along rooftops with their eyes closed. According to Johan, one would know if they were chosen by fate based on whether they survived the ordeal. If they did, they would be able to see the world from a new perspective, a completely new world. Johan traveled to Prague to investigate his childhood, assuming the identity of his sister, Anna Liebert. His journey began with the murder of the head of the Kinderheim orphanage, who had secretly kept tapes from Johan's youth. In his pursuit of these recordings, Johan tracked down several inspectors attempting to sell the tapes, killing them, and leaving the others to be eliminated by Grimmer. He also used Zeman to eliminate corrupt police officers and acquire the recordings he sought. During his time in Prague, Johan had a conversation with Milos, reflecting his own longing for the motherly love he never received. This yearning was evident later, when Johan was seen talking to a portrait of his mother after setting the Red Rose mansion ablaze. Johan attended a high society gathering in Germany, where he was introduced to Peter Capek by Eva Heinemann. He then confronted the terrified Capek at his villa, demanding to know the whereabouts of Bonaparte. Realizing his life was in Johan's hands, revealed the location of Bonaparte's child. As Johan delved deeper into his past and sought out Bonaparte, he encountered Anna and recounted the horrific experiences he believed he had endured at the Red Rose mansion. Anna, however, told him he was mistaken, asserting that those memories did not belong to him, but to her, as she was the one who had been at the mansion. At that moment, Anna realized that everything Johan had done was to protect her, leading her to express a desire to forgive him. She felt immense guilt for the fact that Johan had become a monster. Anna then understood that when Johan had asked her to kill him, it was his way of testing whether he still had a connection with her, whether he was still needed. As Johan spoke with Anna, he came to the realization that the memories of the Red Rose mansion were not his own. In that moment, he understood that he and Anna were not the same person. Johan concluded that it would be better for him to die and erase all traces of his existence. Erasing himself from Anna's life became the only way Johan could express his love for her. He believed that his existence would only bring her pain. Consequently, Johan shifted his focus from destroying the world to orchestrating the perfect suicide, transitioning from a plan to kill Bonaparte to a desire to completely erase his own existence. Anna observed Johan's expression as he heard about the Red Rose mansion, an expression she had never seen before. Johan appeared to be both laughing and crying simultaneously. It could be surmised that Johan was laughing at the irony of his unclear memories and all the evil he had committed because of those memories, and crying because he felt that he held no significance in Anna's life. He believed that the only way to show his love was by erasing every aspect of his existence, leaving Anna entirely alone. Another motivation for Johan's actions was to prove to Tenma that only death is equal. He wanted to leave Dr. Tenma and Anna behind in the world as a way of expressing his gratitude to Tenma for saving him as a child. He also sought to prove his nihilistic philosophy to Tenma, that all lives are not equal, that all lives are meaningless and devoid of purpose. Johan aimed to show Tenma the world as he saw it, a world without meaning, without identity, without a name. He wanted to demonstrate that everyone has a dark side, and that under the right circumstances, anyone could become a monster like him. Johan's ultimate goal was to make everyone believe in the nihilistic and pointless nature of existence, aligning with his tendency to challenge fate. He wanted to see if fate would choose to save him. Having discovered Bonaparte's location, Johan incited the townspeople to turn on each other. He then walked into the town center. Bonaparte, holding a gun to Johan's head, declared that they should die together. However, before Bonaparte could pull the trigger, he was shot and killed by a severely wounded Roberto. As Roberto lay dying, he asked Johan to let him witness the apocalyptic scene that was to come, only to be told that he could not. Johan denied Roberto this sight because, unlike Johan, Roberto still held something of value in his life, preventing him from truly understanding Johan's nihilism. With no one else intervening, Johan asked Tenma if he had finally realized that the only thing equal for all humans is death. He presented Tenma with an apocalyptic vision, one that epitomized the bleakness of his worldview. At that moment, Nina arrived and desperately pleaded with Tenma not to shoot Johan. She then told Johan that she forgave him. However, Johan rejected her forgiveness, insisting that some things could not be undone and that there was no path back. In an attempt to provoke Tenma into killing him, Johan pointed a gun at a young boy, but instead, he was shot by the boy's father. Johan, who meticulously orchestrated every aspect of his life and believed he was chosen by fate to fulfill his desires, was ultimately thwarted by a single, uncontrollable act of fate. Johan was once again operated on and saved by Dr. Tenma, mirroring the events at the beginning of their story. In doing so, Tenma demonstrated that equality is not only found in death, contradicting Johan's nihilistic beliefs. After visiting Johan's mother, Tenma tried to speak with Johan and told him that he did indeed have a name. Suddenly, Johan seemed to awaken from his coma, sitting up and staring at Tenma. It was unclear whether this encounter was a hallucination experienced by Tenma or something real. But after this, Tenma did not respond and soon left, as if waking from a dream. Johan's fate thereafter remains uncertain, as his hospital bed was later found empty. We are left to wonder whether Johan escaped to continue his crimes, died in his coma, or perhaps even committed suicide after finally discovering his true identity. By saving Johan, there was perhaps a chance to pull him back from his nihilistic abyss, to save him entirely. The most terrifying aspect of Johan, however, is that his name was not truly Johan. We never truly know who he was. He seemed to represent the very essence of evil, without form or identity. He is the monster, the nameless monster. Johan is a paradoxical being. He exists yet does not exist. He takes on identity after identity, yet remains nameless. When people face terrible events or crises, they have something to return to, a sense of self, values, hopes, and dreams. But Johan had no such identity. He was empty, the very embodiment of nihilism. All the events in his life, his mother's lack of love, Anna's rejection, the book The Nameless Monster, Kinderheim, combined with his unstable mental state and profound intelligence, transformed him into a monster. He is the embodiment of evil itself. He is the monster, the nameless monster.
At last he had found a name, but there was no longer anyone to call him by it. Such a shame.
Because Johan was such a wonderful name.